Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the October 21st, 2020 business meeting of the Daytona Beach Community Redevelopment Agency. It is our CRA. We are happy to have you with us this evening. At this time, Ms. LaMagna will review the procedures for tonight's meeting.
Good evening. Agendas and all exhibits pertaining to items on the agenda are in the lobby. Persons may visit City Hall during a public meeting to make public comments on propositions coming before the Community Redevelopment Agency for a vote, subject to these city procedures and compliance with all recommendations from the CDC to minimize the spread of COVID-19. The Commission chambers will be closed for in-person attendance by the public. The lobby will be equipped with an audio-video feed to the Commission chambers, and a lectern and microphone will be placed immediately inside the chamber door for public comment. Blue forms will be provided for persons who wish to make public comment. Persons may enter the lobby to speak on an item before the Community Redevelopment Agency when called upon for 2.5 minutes. The lobby will have a defined area with social distancing for persons waiting to make public comment. In addition, the exterior entryway to City Hall will be equipped with a loudspeaker for persons waiting for permission to enter to make public comment due to space limitations in the lobby. Persons may also monitor public meetings from their iPhone, iPad, or other wireless devices on the city's website and enter City Hall for public comment at the appropriate times. All persons must comply with social distancing requirements while at City Hall, such as by remaining at least 6 feet apart. Use of facial masks is mandatory to combat the spread of COVID-19. All citizens completing a blue form will be allowed to speak for 2.5 minutes. When you approach a lectern, please speak clearly into the microphone and give your full name and address. The 2.5-minute clock on the monitor above the dais will start running when you begin to speak. Pay close attention to your time. You will be told when your time has expired. Disorderly conduct in the public meeting of the City Commission. Article 2, Section 6238 of the City Code of Ordinances reads as follows. It shall be unlawful for any person to behave in a riotous or disorderly manner in any public meeting of the City Commission or any committee, agency, or board thereof, or to cause any unnecessary disturbances therein by force, shouting, or any other action that is calculated to disrupt such meeting, or to refuse to obey any ruling of the presiding officer or such meeting relative to the orderly process thereof. All conversation must take place either at the lectern or on the dais so that everyone can hear the business being discussed tonight.
Ms. LaMagna, may we have a roll call?
Commissioner Gilliland? Here. Commissioner Henry?
Here.
Commissioner Reed?
Here.
Commissioner Traeger?
Here.
Commissioner Delgado?
Here.
Commissioner May?
Here.
Mayor Derek L. Henry?
Here. We will now have the invocation led by Commissioner Henry, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Commissioner Gilliland. Please rise for the invocation and pledge.
Father God, we thank you for this day. We're so thankful to be here today. We ask and pray that you give us guidance, that you give us strength, and you give us what we need to make the best decisions for our city. We ask and pray that you continue to bless each and every person going through crises during this time right now. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll now move on to item number 4, which is approval of the minutes of the October 7th, 2020 business meeting of the Community Redevelopment Agency.
So moved. Second.
Whatever.
All right, we'll say Commissioner Gilliland and Commissioner Reed is the second. Do we have any questions or comments? All those in favor, let it be noted by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign.
Aye. Nope.
You opposed?
Nope.
So it's 6-1? Oh, no.
No.
7-0.
No.
You're not opposed. Motion carries 7-0. Okay. Once you get yeah.
Here we go.
Okay. We'll now move on to our agenda approval. If there are any changes, our city manager will address them.
We have no changes, Mr. Mayor.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, let it be noted by saying aye.
Aye.
Those in opposition, same sign. Motion carries 7-0.
All right, we'll now move on to item number 6, which is our administrative items. Item 6A is City Manager's Office Framework Group LLC Redevelopment Incentive Agreement Resolution. A resolution approving the Project Delta West Redevelopment Incentive Grant Agreement between the City of Daytona Beach, the City of Daytona Beach Redevelopment Agency, CRA, and Framework Group LLC, the developer, providing for the CRA to pay the developer an economic incentive grant up to $10,500,000 upon developer's completion of Phase 1 of Project Delta West, subject to conditions, including that Phase 1 must have a minimum of 200 residential dwelling units and a parking garage with at least 550 parking spaces. Developer must reserve a minimum of 105 spaces within the parking garage for the public parking, and the grant shall be paid annually solely from the Community Redevelopment Tax Increment revenue generated by the improved property, authorizing the mayor and the city clerk to execute the agreement on behalf of the city, providing for a recordation, and providing an effective date.
So move.
We have a motion? Second. We have a second? All right. Go ahead. Oh, go ahead, Ms. Deputy Manager.
Drew Driscoll, Deputy City Manager. I'd like to offer you a quick walkthrough of what this incentive agreement is, if you give me a moment. Turn this on. For this Project Delta West incentive agreement, this is a grant granting 95% of the tax incremented generated solely from the Project Delta West property as received by the CRA. Of course, we have to remove the base revenue, the DDA obligation, school tax, and other applicable taxing authorities. The max benefit as proposed in this agreement is for $10.5 million cap. The term of the agreement as drafted is through December 31st, 2036, though the city is asking this commission's permission for us to seek extension through 2031 of 2042 of the CRA. I believe you may have received a draft memo or letter to that effect. If the extension is granted from Volusia County, the agreement will extend to December 31st, 2042. On the next slide, and also included in the resolution that was read, there's been a change. The developer's being asked to construct a minimum of 290-unit multifamily apartment building, in addition to 600 or 588 space parking garage. Of that 588 space parking garage, 93 of those parking spaces will be public parking spaces for a term of 30 years. Upon completion of Phase 1 and a certificate of occupancy is issued, the developer will then become eligible to receive the grant benefits the first year in which the improvements are on the tax roll. This is also the year that sets the base tax rate or the tax revenue. But this is all confusing, and to offer our community a better understanding of what tax increment financing is, I wanted to offer a quick graph. So here we see, can I remove this message, please? Here we see a graph demonstrating what tax increment financing is. Today, this first segment in green is what is currently paid on this property. Once construction is complete, what occurs is we set the base tax revenue rate. That is at the creation that you see at the connection where the orange and the green segments match. After the first year that this is on the tax rolls, the amount of tax generated for the tax increment, this is from the improved value of the property. Right now we have a vacant dirt lot. The improved value, once the taxes are paid to the city, they are then reduced by the DDA amount, the school amount, the base rate amount, and then redeposited to the developer for the public benefit that they're providing us. At the termination of this agreement, which is either the max cap of $10.5 million or the term of 2036 or the extension of 2042, the full ad valorem increased value will then be returned to the tax authority. Another point hearing from our community, I think we've discussed this a couple times, is they don't want taxpayer dollars going to fund development. So, I'm sorry, on this, I want to finish this slide, I'll get to that. Let's assume that they build nothing. Fairly, the city will still get that ad valorem rate that you see here, just incrementally smaller, as we can imagine. In reference to understanding where these tax dollars are coming from, for this infographic that I generated an hour ago, so I apologize for the cartoon nature of it. But on the left, we see the taxpayer dollars, or the general fund dollars. And in the middle, this green line is the barrier that those tax dollars do not cross. On the right, you see the developer tax dollars. These are the developer-paid tax dollars that are deposited to the city. We calculate and reduce the required amounts, including the tax-based revenue, and then we redeposit those same dollars to the developer for providing the public benefit of 93 parking spaces, elimination of blight, economic development, increased jobs, and hopefully increased property value in the surrounding area. Tonight, I've also brought Philip Smith, who is the president of Framework Group, LLC, and they are the proposed developer of Project Delta West. And I'm sure he's available for any questions you may have.
Okay.
Unless you have
Somebody have any questions of Deputy City Manager?
Have you all had an opportunity to view this email we got from Sandy Murphy in regards to this project? It came today at 1:31.
She came with what?
The time was 1:31.
Yes, I saw it.
Okay, you saw that.
I think I saw it. No, I saw it.
It's indicating that the economic impact study that we've been given is a part of support documents for the framework project. She claims it could be skepticism. And one major flaw in the study, it includes zero in the cost to the city to support this vast development. And when the church was on that site, the need for the fire and police services in the property was normal, and infrastructure was not immensely impacted. That will not be the case for what this study describes as a 299-unit apartment plus 596 parking spaces for a garage and 25,000 square feet grocery store. The wear and tear on infrastructure with 10 times the vehicles on bordering roads. Remember Rob Merrill's statement, wish for traffic jams on Beach Street, will increase substantially. Secondly, talking about the numbers just in totals frames the information in a way that obscures the impacts at a smaller scale. Then she gives some examples here. I value Sandy's opinion. I think she has a vast knowledge on some things, and the fact that she takes the time to read this stuff and bring it before us, I think is worth reviewing.
Okay.
I do want to state that we will still receive the base tax revenue amount from the property as that tax rate stands today. In addition, the 5% reduction because we are only offering a 95% TIF. And that's to control any impacts that may exist.
Okay.
I have a question on that 95% calculation. In the actual agreement, it says that it's 95% of 95%. The first 5% is we're statutorily obligated to retain, so they want 95% of the 95% that's left over.
That is correct, sir.
Okay, so they don't want 95%, they want 90.25%.
That's right.
Yes.
That was the math that was in the agreement.
Yes.
So, okay.
This is only the increment tax on this subject property. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Only the properties contained in the already approved PE agreement of
Right.
Project Delta West.
It's increment on anything that they build on that property to make it more valuable.
Correct. Once they've accomplished the mission of developing the apartment complex and the garage, then they become eligible to begin receiving the tax increment at 95% of 95%.
But ultimately, they want the roughly 90% of the increment from everything that's built on the entire block that's part of Delta, not just the apartment complex.
No.
No, it will be everything within. So if they bring in a grocer or another multifamily, a restaurant, a retail, all the mixed uses that are authorized to construct on that, that will all go into that tax increment. Yes, sir.
And at the point that this, if for some reason it grows exponentially, it's just once we get to the 10.5, even if it happened before 2036 or 2042,
Correct. It would cease to exist once they reach.
once
their
they reach
benefit.
that cap benefit, which would be the ideal situation for us.
So in the new numbers that we don't have, it's 588 and 96 public?
588 space garage, 93 public spaces. In your resolution and within the agreement, there is both a minimum minimum threshold, which is 200 residential units and 500 parking spaces. And then in the fourth whereas, you see a threshold that I've amended this evening, or request to amend, to 588 public parking space, or 588 space garage. And then on the seventh whereas, the 105 public parking would convert to 93 spaces.
Just as we get into this, I'm hugely uncomfortable with getting this information 6 hours before the meeting and expecting to make a decision on, are we going to ask the county to extend the CRA? It looks like we're asking to extend all of them, because this document, this letter that Jim's written to Rechtenwald, says the CRA. It doesn't say the downtown redevelopment CRA.
No, it's all of them.
And then the backup document from 2019 talks about all the CRAs, but they all have different dates. So I'm confused by this, because are we only going to extend some of them by a year and ask? I mean, we can only do 5, right, without doing another blight study. Is that correct?
Right.
So, which is why we're asked why the 5 came to be.
And we have the statutory maximum of 60 years for CRA.
So, this is going to be hard for me to say that I can make a decision tonight. So I think it's highly likely I'm going to want to continue this for 2 weeks, so we have time to get through the materials, because this is a very, very complex arrangement that we're being asked to look at, and we simply didn't get the information early enough.
Yeah.
6 hours isn't enough time to go through this.
What part of it, well, I guess I don't normally get through, but what part of it is complicated? I guess I'm not understanding.
Well, look at the tables that are in the attachment to, where they're going through the, that says the parking garage is going to cost $15 million. But everything else says it's going to cost 10.
We've been in conversation with this for over a year now, and we've only recently updated the TIF analysis that you see here. It does include tables at the very end that are not applicable to the conversation this evening, but several of the numbers have been updated to reflect the current agreement.
But they've been working on this for a year, and we're getting it 6 hours ago. That's a problem. I asked for this information when we had the workshop downstairs, and I get it 6 hours before the meeting. That's a problem for me. And the Sandy's comments about the assumptions that are made in the economic analysis, I don't have time to get through that, to start doing calculations. I mean, my degree's in economics, but I don't work in economics right now. So, like I said, I really would like to get additional parking downtown. I really would like to see that block redeveloped, but there's a lot being asked of us to do. I mean, first of all, what are the expiration dates for all 5 CRAs? Are we asking for all 5? Are we only asking for the downtown? If something expires in 2043, why are we asking to extend it to 2042? I mean, this looks to me like it was put together pretty haphazardly, and I'm just not comfortable with the amount of time I've given it to digest the information, and the fact that the chief just told us of several things that have changed today. I talked to Mr. Jagger this morning. They just got the agreement agreed to today, either late yesterday or this morning. And here it is on our agenda, for the later in the evening. So, to me, this doesn't. People beat us up all the time for not looking as though we're transparent. Railroading something like this through, it's such a monstrous project with a $10 million public obligation, is how we get that reputation. So I'm happy to have the conversation tonight and ask questions, but, you know, I'm just really not comfortable with the way this has been delivered to us in such a short amount of time to deliberate.
I understand that, and I have to respect that. You, as a commissioner, you should have the information within the amount of time that you feel necessary to process it and make an informed decision. That's only fair.
Well, so on table one, in the upper right-hand corner, you've got the debt assumption. So the net increment capture at 100%, the coverage ratio at 115%, and the interest rate at 2%. So total supportable debt is $15,811,000. So is that the total price tag for the parking garage?
Now, again, these tables at the end were created for a different assumption of the city owning the garage, not this proposal in which the developer would own and operate and be responsible for maintenance of the garage.
So we're looking at about 15% of the spots that will be public. So there's a public benefit we can spend TIF on. How do we justify a public benefit on the other, 500 parking spaces? How do we say that that's a public benefit to where, a privately owned and operated restricted parking structure has a public benefit to the community at large?
Me personally, though it might not be the understanding of everyone, I believe in the economic impact, not to mention the elimination of blight and the increase in property values and increase of employment opportunities following our downtown and Blue Road redevelopment plan goals.
And I agree that redevelopment is good, but to me, it's the legal question of, if we're saying economic development, the state, after Dino's lawsuit from the whole mess with Ocean Walk, the state said economic development is not a public purpose for the purpose of eminent domain, but we're basically hinging 85% of this on economic development when the state doesn't allow it for eminent domain, but it's okay for spending TIF. I'm not sure I agree with that.
Well, that's a totally different analysis. If you're looking at eminent domain, that's a total different legislative action that was taken. This is the whole objective of redevelopment is to take areas that are blighted and need to change the economic structure as a part of that process. That's what a CRA is all for. If we're not going to do that, then I don't know why we'd consider any improvement in those areas.
We have never given this much money. I mean, this is a giveaway. We are giving this to the developer. They're going to own this thing when it's over. This isn't a public improvement where we're putting in stormwater, replacing a lift station, widening a road, putting in a park, things that are clearly have an economic benefit. Utility, enhancements, capacity enhancements. We haven't done anything in a CRA like this where we're relying so much on saying that the public benefit is economic development. And okay, we can say blight reduction, but it's dirt right now. It is I love the project. I love the idea of getting some more parking down there. I wish it was more. 93 is, we spent $3 million on Beach Street and we got 40. We're gonna spend $10 million on this and get 90. It seems like our cost per spot is awful high for what we're getting for public parking in the downtown area. But, like I said, the ability for me to digest all of this, particularly with as many changes as there are, is difficult. This is the biggest commitment we've ever made in the history of Daytona Beach for something that is going to end up privately owned, and with TIF money.
Is it the biggest, or is One Daytona the biggest?
That wasn't TIF money.
Okay.
It was the same
It's the
basis,
same basis of us giving them
tax.
tax
They
abated
didn't
money.
show up 6 hours before the meeting and give us the background and ask us to make a decision that night.
But it's-
Neither did
but it-
Tomoka Town Center.
But it was $20 million, so it's not as large as that, is all I'm saying.
And that was us, in my mind, and, I was the one that delayed that because I was having trouble getting around the numbers, just like I was the one that delayed the park because I wasn't sure we could afford, it's $50 to $60 million commitment we made for the maintenance of the park over that 50 years, actually 60 to 70 million, so, I'm the one who keeps questioning these numbers and drawing these things out to make sure we can afford them. Now this one, I don't have a problem with the ability to afford it because it's TIF. If they don't generate the TIF, they don't get paid.
That's right.
So that part, I'm not worried about that, the affordability piece. But, there's a fairness part of this. And, back in the day, when I first got on the commission, we generally didn't allow more than 50% of TIF to go back into a project. And if we did, it had to have a clear public purpose, like utility improvements or lift station, the things I mentioned earlier. This is going to end up being a privately owned parking structure that has roughly 15% of the spots available to the public. So, it's a very different thing, but it's also an area that needs assistance. And I recognize that. like I said, I'm not against the project, but this is a significant commitment to give me the data that I asked for, 2-3 months ago, 6 hours before the meeting, and expect me to make a decision.
But that part, I don't begrudge you. I'm just trying to work through what I can work through tonight because I do believe it's a project with great merit, as I think most of us realize. It's something that I think needs to happen for downtown. But we need to have the assurance that we have what we believe we should have as a community and that there is a benefit to us. There is no assurance that there is going to be a grocery store there. But if there's not a grocery store there, they're less likely to make the amount of money that they would need to make to pay for the structure. So we have to acknowledge that there's a probability that there's a great risk involved in what they're doing. And I spoke to a very responsible developer in our community on yesterday or the day before about just how hard it is to build downtown and how much of a challenge this area is to bring units and to build the density that we know is required to turn downtown around. If it's going to be turned around, is the number one thing that we need are people working and, more importantly, people living down there. So it has to, we have to do it in some way. Whether this is the way or not, that's why we need to talk it out. Yes.
So, there are many small they're small merchants who are downtown, and for a long time they've been waiting and waiting and waiting for a significant transformation to take place. They've been told for 20 plus years something is going to happen. It's taken that long to get some sort of push happening in the downtown core, especially since it's in the heart of Daytona Beach. We don't have any extra land to grow to. So I guess my question to the city manager is, when was the last time we had this much interest in downtown when we're just starting?
Never.
I mean, and when will we get that opportunity again? I'm not saying we take every single bite that's thrown to us. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying that there's a definite need here. And what I appreciate about this project is that it's on the cusp of Ridgewood. And for how long have we said, I know I've been saying, and I'm sure Commissioner Reed also, what can we do about Ridgewood? That corridor needs to change. This is one way to start affecting a greater change. So when was the last time we had people come down here and say, we want to do something?
Very, very few, to be honest with you. We've had some that have looked at it, but no one's come forward with a project at this point. Brown and Brown is the only major investment we've had in the downtown area since I've been here.
But we cannot hang our hat on one, Brown and Brown.
Well, Brown and Brown's investment really is an opportunity to bring over 600 new employees to the downtown area. And that's one thing this project would do, is provide housing for those individuals. So
when you think of serving a need, the need of the people may not be here yet, but it's coming. And so for how long have we created things down here and not thought of the parking ahead of time, and then have residents tell us, hey, parking, I hear this constantly. We really want it, we really need it. So now we're thinking it differently. We're saying, okay, let's put the parking in ahead of time, knowing full well that we won't be able to do this again. So I think as a representative of the downtown core and speaking to merchants, I think this would be something that they would welcome down there. It really shows that we are making an effort to help the downtown area.
And for me, if we agree that it's going to pay for itself, And I appreciate you trying to explain that to our residents, because there's always this misnomer that somehow the use of TIF funds is a gift to a developer, when in reality, you wouldn't, it's not an increase. I look at it more as, I use the term like rebate. It's more of a rebate based upon a purchase, or, adding value to the community. And I understand Commissioner Gilliland's point. He's trying to measure what the value is and to see if it's worthy of $10 million, $10.5 million. And I think, to your point, the need for housing for folks who are going to be working in this core. My point is the need for density to help stimulate and to create, the revenue moving through those businesses downtown, is a part of the benefit that can't be necessarily calculated, that we have to acknowledge.
And I agree with everything that both of you were saying, but, they're asking us to pay for 10% of their project. It's $78 million, and they want us to put in the $10 million, and I'm going to say, 10% of that, actually 15% of that, so, $1.5 million of that is a true public benefit, because we're going to have public parking down there, to the tune of 93 parking spaces. So we're going to put in the other 8.5 million is going in is public dollars that the developer is saying they need to make the project financially viable, which I can do nothing other than take their word for that, because it's just too hard to calculate. And I think part of this is that we're going to pay $1 million for the land that the parking lot garage is going to sit on. Is that right?
No, it is not correct. Again,
Okay.
those tables are from the old
Well, you just told me
proposal.
this in the manager's lobby before we
sir.
walked into this meeting
That
30 minutes ago.
The old proposal for the $10.5 million total build-out included a $1 million purchase of the property, but we are not going to be the owner of this garage, therefore the $1 million is not there.
So it's only 9.5.
That is correct.
Once again, here's another thing that's changing as we're being asked to make a decision. I don't think that the agreement says 9.5. I think the agreement says 10.5.
The agreement does not say that we're refunding them for the construction of a garage. We're only granting them up to $10.5 million for both an apartment complex and parking garage.
Okay, so we're going to give them $9.5 million for the parking garage and then $1 million towards the apartments? Is that the way that works, if we're not going to be buying the
It
million?
does not separate the two. The grant is for $10.5 million of the tax increment generated from their property.
But you see what I'm saying? Based on what he's talking about, the parking garage is only going to cost $9.5 million to build. They're going to be building on land that they own. So the other $1 million is going to go towards the apartment building, based on what he just described. Which, once again, I mean, it's the number part of this. It's the fairness part. We know the need is great. We know this is a very good project. It's going to draw other investment around it. And I wholly support this thing moving forward, but it's the public contribution as a piece of this that I'm struggling with. And the fact that the numbers kind of keep changing, now it's $9.5 million to the garage and $1 million towards the apartment building, it's uncomfortable for me. And, if this was something that we had gotten earlier and we could ask questions, I'd feel differently. I'm sorry. Oh, I thought you were going to say something.
Mr. Mayor, the only thing, it's not like it's taking money out of our pocket. It is the fact that the project doesn't get built. You don't have 10
And I've
million.
already admitted that. The affordability isn't the issue here, because we're not on the hook for anything. If they build the parking garage and don't build anything else, and it doesn't generate any TIF really, then they're on the hook for the whole thing.
That's right.
So that part isn't the question. It's the public commitment towards a private venture that is the piece that I'm trying to make sure that we're doing the right thing by the people who live and work here. The project is great. It's needed. I'd like to see, honestly, I'd like to see a bigger building with more units, to be frank. But in a parking garage with more public parking, a bigger garage, that's what it took. But, you know, this is what they have brought forward. They've done the math. They've crunched the numbers to figure out what makes sense in our market, what they can afford. And in the end, they came up $10.5 million short, and they're asking us to cover that, to make it happen. You know, we did that with One Daytona. You know, they were saying it cost us the same thing here to build this as it would if we built in Orlando, but we can't charge Orlando rents. You know, hence the $40 million 20 city, 20 county, support, you know, to get that thing, you know, off the ground. And it was an important project. This is an important project, and, you know, putting some public funds into it, I don't have an issue with, but, you know, when we met downstairs, I think they wanted 15 million. You know, and now we're down to, you know, 9.5 for the garage and $1 million for the apartment complex.
And that 15 million again was the city owning and constructing a much larger garage.
So,
Yeah. Couple hundred more space.
Is your only issue the speed with which this is happening, and just you want clarification on numbers? But apart from that, you're pretty okay with the concept, the idea of it, et cetera.
right. Yeah. I've said that several times now. You know, it's the public dollars that are going into this that will be, which are going to be privately, you know, develop a facility asset that's privately owned on the back end of this, you know, that I am trying to get my head around, make sure that I agree that that's, you know, kind of where we want to go.
Yeah, it's much better that a private entity make that improvement rather than the city. Do we want to put $10, $15 million into a structure that takes it off the tax roll, and yet you're depending on the operating income to support it? I would much rather have an investment with someone who is going to make not only investment in the parking structure, but an investment in the other facilities that are going to continue to contribute to the tax base and the economy of Daytona Beach, and to provide jobs that are very necessary for this community. That's what CRAs is all about.
But the jobs it creates are not going to be great jobs. You know,
Pardon?
the jobs it create are going to be people that need affordable housing, to be totally frank. You know, they're talking about 100 jobs. These are not going to be high-paying jobs. They're going to be people working in restaurants, working in grocery stores, doing maintenance in the apartment building, you know, collecting fares for people going in and out of the parking garage, or, you know, things like that. Maintenance people. You know, the jobs is not, this thing creating jobs is not a selling point to me. It's the redevelopment of that block that's the selling point for me.
Redevelopment of downtown should be the selling point, because that's what we're trying to do, is to bring meaningful development that has improvements to the community overall. The community, the benefits downtown will go way beyond what the investments being made by the developer in this community. It accrues to those that have questions about the viability of the economics of downtown. And when you start putting heads in beds and people working downtown, you start to impact the economy.
And there's a great incentive on their part to make it happen. That's really what I like about it. They have an incentive in order to get the TIF money to develop that lot to its maximum use, so that they will get the amount of money that they have available to them. And if they do that, yeah, as much as I want 300 people down there, I really want them to build a Publix down there.
Agreed.
I mean, that makes it accessible. You talk about people in Midtown, you know, that becomes their grocery store, really. Because that's about the distance that I drive to Publix. It's from Midtown to this location. So I see it as, you know, if that could happen, it's you know, and even though I know that's not a part of what we're discussing, but that's the hope, and that's a part of why you incentivize this type of project.
And I don't, like, once again, I don't disagree with any of that. You know, it's just the public is being asked to pay for 10% of this project. Is that fair? And I cannot get my head around whether or not that's fair or not. That's where I'm stuck. And it's, you know, it might be. You know, we have some precedent where we've done this before. It's, you know, obviously an important project. You know, let's get back to this extending the CRA. You know, what are the expiration dates of the 5 CRAs, and why are we only asking? Why does this appear to address all CRAs when we're only talking a single date instead of 5 dates?
You have one CRA. You have redevelopment districts that are part of that CRA.
So the district, the downtown district, We went through this, and I can't remember what the exercise was a couple years ago. And we talked about when, different redevelopment areas were going to sunset, the districts themselves. So I assume that some may sunset before 2037? Is that right?
I'm not familiar with the dates of the redevelopment area boards, but I can tell you the CRA extension is what we have asked for, not the redevelopment boards.
The districts themselves.
The agency itself.
So, but doesn't each individual district have a sunset date?
It's all a part of one CRA.
Right.
It's one CRA, and that's what we're talking about.
I think Main Street's the oldest one, if I remember correctly. And I think Blue and South Atlantic are the newest ones. I think South Atlantic's the newest one. So, but I didn't think they all had the same sunset date. When we were talking about projects, between downtown and Main Street was when this came up in a discussion prior. So, but you're telling me that the agency itself and all 5 districts all sunset December 31st, 2036.
I'd have to go back and look at specifically, which I'll be happy to do that.
Because
But this
your
is
letter-
the same. This is the same subject we've discussed in workshops before, and we talked about extending the CRA. So this is not new, and the only thing we're doing now is trying to put it into play before this CRA does expire.
Well, and we're contractually obligating ourselves to make a good faith effort to extend it
Absolutely.
as part of this agreement, which was not something that we talked about before today.
We have talked about that.
Not related to this project. When we were talking
Not
about the
related
new
to this
City
project.
Hall and the parking garage,
That's
and
right.
15 million and all that.
Wasn't even related to that.
This was extending the CRA was not a formal ask of part of this process.
That question about the CRA, we tried to make sure you were aware of everything we're trying to do to make sure it's feasible and it does work. That is not what's before you. What's before you is approval of a project that is funded by the city out of TIF funds from the CRA.
And your letter to Rectenwald that will go out tomorrow, asking the county to extend it
That's right.
for 5 years. So, I
One
mean,
of
they're
the
tied together.
One of the issues we encounter as we begin to approach that expiration date is the ability for any developer to gain incentive as we narrow that window of availability. And I imagine that's going to become an issue as Midtown and the other CRAs continue on and we get a developer in Midtown, they're going to want the
Right.
full benefit, but that window is narrowing each day.
Right.
There are times in decisions that you make as a board that are important. And there are times when you have to look at what is the benefit to the community overall and to the community downtown. And if this is one of those decisions that you don't want to make and you don't think you've got the right information to make the decision, then it's a decision you have to decide. It's not my decision. It's not staff's decision. But I can tell you this is the only developer we've had come to us that's being willing to step forward and try to make the project work. Now, if that's not what you want, then we can certainly go back and look and see if we get something else. But I'm telling you, you got somebody here who's ready to put the project forward, and it's up to you if you want to let it go or not.
So you're saying we found framework, Consolidated Tomoka didn't find framework? Somebody on our staff was the one who contacted that gentleman and sold this project to him?
Actually, I worked with Scott Bullock with CTO and asked him if he had anyone, and Philip was
Yeah.
one who has investments in our community and was interested, and we worked forward with it.
And the part of the equation that you left out there about the benefits was you also have to balance that with the costs to the community. And in this case, the cost is $10.5 million.
It's only a cost to the community if you already have it.
So-
If you don't have it, you don't have a cost. And what he's going to do is make an investment so you do have funds, not only for, and there are many things that come on top of that beyond just the tax funds. This city doesn't operate solely on tax funds. There's other associated services we provide, the utilities and all those kinds of things that are very necessary for it to be successful. And you got to have a developer with, willing to participate.
Okay.
And-
Well, I want to add another issue. Did you have something else? I don't want to cut you off. I want to add another issue because I want to make sure the project, I want it to succeed, and I want to feel as though we're getting what we need. Even if we ask for another week or two, I don't know, we talked to the developer about that, but here's an issue I also have with the project though, or concern, that I've said is not a deal breaker, but you got 93 units or parking spaces. The concern that I have is, we know we need spaces downtown. Is it really in our best interest to say that we want those 93 units or spaces? I don't know why I call them units. Guess I'm mixing it with the construction. Do we need them to be in this location? Because when you look at the need for parking in downtown, this is not the best place for 93 public units or spaces. It would, but I don't know if we have another space downtown or that we could somehow leverage the CRA dollars that are being used for public use to get 93 spaces. You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
And if that's not the case, is this because this is the place that we can get 93 units for the best cost in this scenario, does that make it our best space or best choice? Or do we have another option?
So building spaces, finding spaces, as we've discovered downtown, when new businesses are popping up, right? That's a hard thing to do. You cannot create land where there is no land. So downtown, the issue is that we had minimal parking. We weren't expecting this many cars to be downtown. And consequently, the restaurants did better, they improved, but we couldn't find any more parking. It was too late. The buildings were already there. And I suspect what's going to happen on those north blocks are the same things. More buildings are going to come and more structures will come eventually. Eventually, they're all going to be there, and you won't have any parking places for it. So I almost feel as though you first have to create the parking structure, and then the rest starts to fill in one at a time. But what we're discovering downtown is that, where do you find it? MLK, where do you create space where there is no space? It's impossible to do. The streets are there, the houses are there, the businesses are there. There's nothing you can do. You almost have to start with the parking first.
Okay, so there's no other space to get spaces that
So
would...
a long time back, Mr. Chisholm, before my time, there was discussion of having a parking structure behind Magnolia. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. And is that still on the table? That does not help with future development. And by development, I mean does not help with future expansion on the north side. That's not going to help it at all. It might be great for the south block. They're going to benefit from it, and that's fantastic. But the north block, we're still going to be short parking.
Oh, okay, so the north block, this space needs parking down here. Okay.
The south
but
block.
Here's the issue. We don't have a parking study, so I don't really like that. We should be making a decision based on a parking study. But I'm not gonna stop the project because we don't have a parking study. But it's a lot of money to be spending to not be getting the best use for the community. But, I guess we'll have to find a way to get parking for the south. Because do you think people will park down there and then walk to the south part of
I guess
Beach Street?
for me, my concept is always future-based. I see what's coming down there already. I see it every single day. I see the redevelopment of all the blocks. I see Riverfront Park starting. I'm sitting there looking at Riverfront Park going, hey, there's a north and a south side to that. There's an MMB side to that. Where are those people going to park when they come here? We're going to have to start expecting success and saying people are going to be coming down here. But I really think it starts with parking. It really does. only because we've had so many issues on the other side because of it. That's one thing all the merchants have spoken of is the parking situation. And we have businesses who are coming into the north blocks. They're investigating and they're wanting to come. So I think that's going to be an issue for us in the future unless we can try to address it now. So I'm looking at the future positive impact this is going to have and how happy the merchants are going to be on both sides.
Okay.
And the more walkable you make a community and the more units you get into that, general area, really your reliance on parking goes down a certain extent. And this project is part of that. Because I love the project. My thing is it right for the public to pay 10% of the project costs? And that's the one point I'm stuck on. And I'm really not sure where I would go with this because I do like the project very much.
Okay.
I think we have speakers.
Did we have speakers? Oh, I'm sorry.
I see
didn't know
a stack
that.
of blue sheets over there.
Oh, all right. We'll hear from the speaker. I didn't know that. Would have heard from you a long time ago. Sorry.
Our first speaker is Ted Hordecki, and on deck is Sandy Murphy.
You didn't mention the other part.
Hi, I'm Ted Hordecki, 113 Braddock Avenue, Daytona Beach, Florida. I'm speaking tonight. For about 2 years, I came to every commission meeting, try to learn whatever I could. And the best commission meeting was recently when Commissioner Henry said, "What's in it for the residents?" And that was like the most profound thing I've ever heard. Maybe you've said it before, but not like that. What's in it for the residents? My opinion on this project, everybody's going to crunch their numbers, but it looks like you got some smart gentlemen out there. I'm sure they could sharpen their pencil. And if you really want the development, get it. But, I want to hear that both sides are giving something and taking something. If somebody, I'm no negotiator. I'm sure you have people negotiating for the city. But I say sharpen your pencil and get the thing done. But the main concern is what's in it for the residents. That's got a lot to do with the further business. From what I hear, the commission's going to start conducting business, and we're going to say, you got your hat in your hand. What about us? And that's it. Thank you.
Okay. You want to say that now? Okay.
Mr. Smith,
We,
could you?
let's ask him to make a comment about something, and then that way you may want to hear this before your remark. Miss Sandy. Okay. Okay.
Hard time.
Just wait and let him make a statement, and I think you would be
Okay.
happier with that, and it might impact your remarks. Okay? Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, members of the commission, thank you. It's nice to be here in person. I was the person that you couldn't see or hear very well the last time we had a meeting downstairs, so I apologize for that. I was far, far away. That's the best we could do at the moment. But as you know, I'm Philip Smith. I'm the president of Framework Group. This is our second project in Daytona Beach. We are just about to turn our first units at our project off Williamson Boulevard across the street from the hospital. We're real excited about that deal and real excited about this market. I told you before we had long circled this market, and we're looking for the right opportunities to begin to take a foothold here. I was explaining to a few of you, and a few of you also know that it is our strategy to enter a market and then execute housing really all across the pricing spectrum. So when you look at our portfolio, you'll see.
And sir, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but they can't hear you out there. So if you want to do that, or even if you want to take off your mask.
Yeah, you can take it.
I take this off?
Yeah.
Great.
But Drew, you need to
More
move
oxygen into my
a little
brain.
further away.
Anyway,
So you're
is that
6 feet
better?
away.
I think that's better. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right there.
So this would be number two, and it would be two of many more to come in the future. I was just about to say that if you look at our portfolio, you'll see a really huge variety of housing types, everything from homeless housing projects to high-rise luxury multifamily. They're all rental, 100%. And I'm looking for markets that really have a huge diversity of housing need, great employment, great access, all the things that you are. And I was sitting there thinking, it's kind of ironic. I'm here because this probably went exactly the way you all hoped it would. There's this collective desire to have downtown redeveloped, the collective will, there you put initiatives in place, you invest in your own infrastructure and waterfront. Huge private company like Brown & Brown decides to locate its corporate headquarters downtown, and that's successful. I wouldn't be standing here if it weren't for them. There's just no way. We need to see, and our investors and lenders need to see, an institutional-sized employment base in a market like this when we're coming in and being pioneers in an area that hasn't really seen this type of redevelopment yet. I wouldn't be here without them, and the person that would come after us would tell you the same thing about us. That grocer is going to say, I wouldn't be here unless 450 people lived right up the street. So this is going the way that it's supposed to go. And the question of whether or not it's worth it is a question that you have to decide. I mean, you should be judicious. You should be careful. I am. I mean, we don't invest $70 million without doing our homework. We are small and flexible, though, so we do take some risks that other large developers just won't take. You're not going to see nationally scaled apartment developer with institutional partner probably go after this deal for a while. But we can. And so that's what we offer. If you look at our projects and our portfolio, you'll see that we really try to, every project is unique. Every project is targeted at something very specific. We love urban infill revitalization opportunities. We love to be a part of that conversation with cities and counties and do our part. And we're looking and hoping that someone comes after us and makes this, another justification that this was the right thing to do. So the reality of doing urban infill development is that, if we're going to do 300 units, I can't do without a parking garage in a downtown. You wouldn't want me to. You don't want 2- and 3-story buildings in your downtown. You want a dense development where you can maximize the number of people in the smallest place. To increase their efficiency, they can walk to work, they can walk to the grocery store, they can walk their dog, they don't have to get in their car. And so that's only possible in this case with the development of a structured parking garage. And just like your example in Orlando, today the math doesn't work. Someday it will. The next person will build a structured parking garage and not ask you for a penny. Today that doesn't work. So that's what it needs in order to come into existence. So we stand ready to help you realize this vision of revitalization of downtown, us or somebody else. I think this area has enormous promise. Even if we don't get this approval from you tonight, we're not going anywhere. You'll see me again. We're going to see me coming back with a bunch of different types of housing proposals because we're in for the long haul. But we're excited about our first one. We're excited about this one. And we look forward to answering your questions, getting your feedback. And I certainly appreciate the city manager and Mr. Driscoll working so diligently with us. I can understand how it seems quick. We're under pressure from a contract standpoint with our seller. So those are other forces that obviously impact all of us. And you guys have been excellent partners in helping us figure that out with all of you. So we appreciate that. So I'm here to take your questions if you have any. Thank you. Sure.
Just one question. It's one that's on our mind all the times, and that is affordable housing. Can you tell me if you're willing to make any contribution toward that effort?
Well, I would point out one thing. Looking at the area median income of this county, as our rents sit today, if you make 100% of AMI, which is considered, workforce affordable, it sort of walks that line if you know those designations, 120, 100, 80, 50, 30. If you make 100% of AMI, you can qualify for 18% of the units in this project, about 55 units you can afford at 100% of AMI. If you make 120% of AMI, which is by most definitions workforce housing, 26% of the units in this project are affordable for your salary, for your household income. That's as it sits today. So I think that's good news for the affordability question in downtown. We have to walk a very fine line. We can't, put a price on this that people won't pay. We have to address the market as it is today, and that's how it is today.
People are building, they build according to market rate, like what the market can bear at that particular time. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
That's
So
simple answer.
could you give me some, could you give me some just numbers here? Like what kind of person is this who can afford this? Explain that to us. 'Cause
Well,
that would
person-
help tremendously.
A person who makes $47,000 a year could be a lower middle manager, could be a restaurant manager, a medical worker, first responder, police, teacher, retail, that sort of thing. So it's just the people that make cities run and that need to live closest to where they work.
To me, that becomes part of the public benefit. It's just the fact that they have that in this particular, and they can live that close to the river and enjoy the environment that's being built down here, right? So thank you.
So you said you're using the county numbers? What was your 100% number for the county?
47, was the rent or the salary?
The salary?
Well, there were actually two slightly different numbers. 46,760 was the number that this calculation is based on.
Okay. See, the problem there is you're using county numbers, and our numbers in Daytona Beach are significantly lower than that. So what you're saying is you're going to build something that the people who need help in Daytona Beach can't afford to live there.
Exactly.
So other people in other parts of the county could live there, but Daytona Beach residents will not be able to afford it.
For the longest time, we've been going back and forth between the concept of affordable housing versus workforce housing. And so I guess the question becomes, are we looking for workforce housing, affordable housing, or a mix? And does one developer have to do everything? Or can it be this is our first inroad into providing the workforce housing that we're saying we want for our first responders?
Well, I'm trying to make sure that we're not, it's qualified as to the statement that was made that if you make 100% of the average monthly income, or the average income, that you could afford to live there. But he's not using Daytona Beach numbers, he's using county numbers. If you use Daytona Beach numbers, our average person in Daytona Beach would not be able to afford to live there. There would be 0 units. He had mentioned 15% or some number if you were at 100%. In Daytona Beach, our average number, there will be 0 units available that they could afford in this particular project. I'm not asking that they put affordable housing into this project. I just want to make it clear that that statement was on a county basis, not a city basis.
And so I guess in response to that, earlier you mentioned, I'm not sure if it was over here, I think maybe the Mr. Manager mentioned the idea that, maybe it was you, that Brown & Brown is coming in there, and I don't like to put all of my eggs with one entity. I just really don't, right? So they're coming in, they're bringing X number of employees with them who will be making, I'm guessing by your calculations, that or more. Otherwise, you would not be building it there, okay?
And this is why you'll see a developer like Framework come to you before you'll see a national institutional apartment developer, because we can say, well, we've got future jobs out there, and we're willing to take that bet. Even though today's neighborhood rents are where they are, have difficulty affording the biggest units here, for sure.
Yeah.
But that's the line we walk, and that's what redevelopment is about. Somebody's got to step out and believe that the Brown & Brown employees are going to catch us. And then when they do, the demand is going to be higher, and this happens over and over if it works.
And I think the numbers that Brown & Brown were talking about for the folks that were going to be relocated from elsewhere in the country to Daytona Beach would be about that bracket. But that's not your typical Daytona Beach resident.
But keep in mind, we're also working on some other ideas as it relates to housing. It does not all have to be in this particular entity, right? So we recognize that we're going to be attracting people. And the idea that we're attracting people is very exciting to me. And the idea that we're attracting them downtown specifically, when so much of the progress has been on the west side, that to me is even more exciting, considering we haven't had that. So this type of, even though it might seem, it's just a parking garage, to me it's so much more. It represents so much more, and it's a pull toward the beach. It's a pull in this direction. It's a pull in getting people to pay even more attention to some other areas that we need some help on. So it's not just a parking garage, and it's not just 93 units. It's actually what it represents. Maybe not to the west side, but certainly to the Midtown area, and certainly to Beach Street, and certainly to Beachside.
Given the economic information about Daytona Beach and the county, and there's somewhat disparity there, are you willing to put $1 a square foot as a commitment to fund affordable housing in the city?
I think a linkage fee is good public policy overall. It's my personal belief that, unfortunately, today, housing developers are saddled with and expected to be the creators of affordable housing as opposed to developers in general. I personally believe that all development should pay a linkage fee that goes into an affordable housing fund that then the regulatory bodies and public policymakers decide where it goes and when. Unfortunately, being a housing developer, it always seems to fall on us because we build housing. Well, you should build affordable housing too. Well, we're not the only economic engine around here. We're a part of it, and I'm willing to do my part, but I can't create affordable housing all by myself. We do create affordable housing. I described several different projects in Tampa and Hillsborough County where we've done that in partnership with the city and the county. We were the largest recipient of neighborhood stabilization program funds from HUD during the recession. We were one of the last developers standing in that market, and our redevelopment affordable housing projects in Hillsborough County were really the first sign of life coming out of the recession in that market. Those worked. So to answer your question, I'm willing to participate and do my part. I think it's good public policy. That's, that amount is not, $1 a square foot isn't something that we, sort of baked into this thing from the very beginning. If, as this balloon sort of pushes and pulls, and we have a dollar figure we're working with, and we want to push and try to create a contribution to a linkage fund, an affordable housing fund, I think we study the impact together, and we decide what's palatable for the city and for us.
Okay. Well, with that said, I know you're under a time crunch. Is it, and I know you're here tonight, can we come back to the next meeting and have that codified, or are you able to codify that tonight based on the number of parking spaces that we're asking for and everything else? Or are you able to agree to that in some sort of adjustment to that, as it would be $1 a square foot by my calculation? You've got how many?
It's about 288,000 square feet.
Okay.
But, Mr. Mayor, it's hugely inappropriate for us to make a public contribution to this because the project does not work financially and then try and extort money out of him for affordable housing.
I'm not
It's just gonna be
extorting
our
money out of him. We're having a conversation. I asked him a
We can't
question.
subsidize the project and expect him to take some of that money and subsidize affordable housing.
Listen, I'm asking him a question, and we're having a conversation. I'm just clarifying what the manager said. We can come back and you guys can have a conversation later, or I don't see what you're saying that I'm extorting. I take offense to that. We're having a conversation based on what he just said, and he has a right to answer it. So do you want to make all the decision tonight, or do you want to come back in 2 weeks?
I think it's prudent. I'm not a fan of continuing my own hearings.
Okay.
But it might be prudent to study that and understand how it fits into the overall numbers. If you're saying to me that we have an amount of money to work with, and it's flexible about how it's allocated, some of it goes to an affordable housing fund, if that's what we're calling it, but the overall dollar figure is basically
It's the
staying the same, then I think that's a reasonable request. Because, the money is coming from all of you, from the CRA, from future revenue from the property, if that money gets invested in a different way and the size of the project decreases, the parking garage gets smaller, there are fewer spaces, I mean, we can study that.
Okay. So you'd rather continue it?
Well, I'm telling you that I'm flexible. I can't, I'm not going to put my foot down and then ask, and risk there being open questions. But I would like a decision tonight. I'm under
So-
a great deal of pressure, timing pressure from our seller.
So,
Our due diligence
let me finish.
period expires tomorrow.
oh,
So that's an important factor for us to consider.
So let me ask you. $288,000 would be 288 would be the right figure. At the number of spaces that you're allocating, can you accommodate that?
Yes. With fewer spaces.
Okay. And what's the number of spaces that we asked for? 590?
8.
598 or something? Okay. What's the
Sorry.
number that you gave them, Drew?
Was it 588?
Five,
600 as drafted.
five, and it's 588 now?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
so, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I thought I heard you ask a completely different thing. I thought what I was hearing you say, what I thought Mr. Hornadecki said I could go with, which was we have enough people here and you have enough people you can call real quick to clean up the numbers that Mr. Gilliland is requesting. That's what I thought we were headed toward. That's what I thought. And now we're heading into a different area.
Oh, so you don't want to make a decision tonight?
No, it's not. I do want to make a decision tonight, but I'm thinking what's holding Commissioner Gilliland up is the idea that the numbers are not concrete. I think that is the issue.
I think what just happened here was they're going to take away 25 public parking spaces and put that money towards an affordable housing fund.
Taking place?
Yeah.
Yeah, he just
Well,
negotiated
you-
down the public parking so that we could,
The number that they already
that
gave.
turns me into a no vote for absolute certain
We
on this
know.
project today or 2 weeks from now. It's a public subsidy that's going in this project because the numbers do not work. There is absolutely no way that we can turn around and say, oh, we're going to pay for 10% of your project, but now we want you to contribute to a fund. There's not extra money in this project. If there was, they wouldn't be here asking for the handout. So, that part I absolutely cannot agree to.
Okay. Well, I realize we're in a tough situation. We're trying to solve a tough problem. Okay. Workforce housing is a tough problem for us. And I said from the very beginning that if the project didn't address workforce housing, either inside the project or in the manner that we're discussing now or some other manner, that I wouldn't be able to support it. So one way or the other, we got a yes here, you got a no there.
So I think it does address workforce housing. I think it addresses future work potential as it enters in. I also think it addresses, because if we have the parking structure, I can see people wanting to build more properties downtown. I can see more people coming into the downtown core. This is not just about to me, this is not just about the 93 units. It's also about what more could be coming as a result of it. That's what I'm also looking at the potential of it being right on Ridgewood. Nobody is investing anything along that corridor,
No,
and we
it's-
so need it to spill into the west side. And I'm really quite frankly I'm going to be honest, I'm tired of the west side being the only side that is expanding. And now we don't have as much, we're not rich down here. And I, for one, am glad that someone has taken the time after 125 years, and I do believe in God, but we had a church property there, right? No taxes, no nothing. Now we're moving in a direction. And so I'm glad that you're doing this. I think it's a fantastic project. And again, if it's about presenting the numbers in a better way, take some time, if the mayor will let you, and present them differently so that we have a clean document to work with. But on the whole, do you think it's going to impact your area, Commissioner Reed, or it'll have no impact? What do you think it'll do for your community?
Well, I think it's interesting that you would say that you're tired of stuff happening on the west side and nothing's happening down here, because I would say the same in regards to my area that's connected to your area, Midtown in particular. Start somewhere, and I have to agree with Commissioner Gilliland on getting this at the last minute. I understand what the project is going to do. I wholeheartedly agree. I can see it. I understand it. But if we've got some concerns, we've really got to think about this thing. We really do. Now, you're asking me, do I think it's going to spill over into my area? Probably not. If nothing else, it'll just look good from my area. Something else will look good from my area.
Sure, with the potential of a grocery store, which you've wanted, with the potential of just the workforce.
My people can't afford Publix.
But
I
for
work
so
two
long,
jobs and I don't go to Publix.
we've been wanting to have a Publix in the community. But that's the phrase that's been used. But so that is no longer something that you think that the community would benefit from.
I mean, I think that area would benefit from it. I mean, the way that area is flourishing, yes. And with the employees that are coming here from Brown and Brown, yes, they would be able to afford it. It would justify their area and making it walkability. But if you're to say that a grocery store in that area that would be a Publix or something of that magnitude, would the people in my zone be able to afford it? No.
Yeah.
I go to Publix
Well,
when things are on sale.
just for a long time, I thought the phrase that was being thrown out was, we need a Publix in that area. But the recognition that that's not going to happen.
We need a grocery store.
But I think they mean an Aldi's.
A whaty, sir?
Yeah.
An Aldi's? An
That's
Aldi's.
what they mean.
All right.
That's what she's saying. Okay.
And the grocery store is 25,700 square feet. That is, I don't think that's a Publix. That's smaller.
It's smaller.
Publix can do 25,000 bucks.
It's a neighborhood
They do.
Publix.
They have different sizes.
You got little babies.
Neighborhood stores.
Then that Buc-ee's is like 50 or 60,000 square feet, and that was bigger than the Publix they
Bigger
built
than
out of
the Publix
Margaritaville.
down there.
So, maybe they have a smaller Greenwise or something that they can do. But
Do you have any ideas on how, I mean, you know what, we have I believe in asking people and collaborating, right? So do you have any ideas? You see the position we're in. From your experience, you've done this before. Do you have anything you can offer in terms of a potential solution to help the situation?
Well, I mean, in answer to the fundamental question about is it fair, you can imagine what I'm going to say to that. But I'm not in your position. I understand that you have to grapple with that question. But what I mentioned earlier about this going exactly the way you wanted it to go, I meant that because I think these decisions, these hard decisions are coming up because these good things are happening. And so this is an enviable position to be in that you're sitting in right now. You've got somebody willing to do something to advance a very important piece of property in your downtown, in a redevelopment area that you've already invested in, that you all see the promise in, or you wouldn't have invested in it to begin with at the Riverwalk. And so we can help you do that. I mean, I have a limited box of tools. I need that key piece that you all have, which is giving me back the future revenues from the development that we would create. That's what we need. Now, we have to figure out, there are needs here as well, and we're trying to address, I think us coming here addresses a lot of the needs. The rising of all boats economically, the creation of future tax revenue after this is paid off, the economic impacts of job growth, and they may be modest. The jobs that are created just in this building may only be a few, but what about the people that show up because they've got 450 new people that buy stuff right next to them? And those business owners, this is a catalytic endeavor. And so all of the benefits aren't going to be crystal clear right now. There's got to be a little bit of a bet on your part, just like there is on our part. So there's got to be a little bit of discomfort there. That doesn't surprise me. But the question of fairness is yours to make. I mean, I believe that overall, in the big picture, this is how cities get revitalized. You're not the only commission to grapple with this, but this is how it gets done.
Okay.
frankly, prior to this affordable housing thing that just came up, I was kind of leaning towards yes. But, if it requires a public subsidy, I do not understand how we could possibly say you also have to contribute to affordable housing. Those two things do not work together. So, I'd like to hear from the rest of the speakers, but
Yeah, we'll hear from the speakers, but you have to realize that this is a part of the benefit that we as a commission acknowledge that we need. We need workforce housing, affordable housing, and we need to have the capacity to help make that happen. And this project enables us to do that. And we don't have to all agree, but I think we all agree that we need workforce housing.
Absolutely.
And if we all agree to that, this is an opportunity to show the public that this is a part of the benefit that we will afford them in this way. You just said, now, if you're gonna get 100 people to work at Publix, most of them are not gonna have anywhere to live. And they're not gonna live in this project. So if we take this $300,000 and we generate it and help use it and leverage it in a part of our community where they can live so that they will be able to get to work. That's all I'm trying to accomplish. I'm not trying to take something away from him or to derail the project, but we have to make sure that as we bring in new jobs, that we are looking out for the folks who are working in those places. And I don't think this is too much to ask. So basically, it just looks like this. He put $288,000 into a fund and build a parking garage for 588 spaces, and hopefully, ultimately, a Publix and other mixed use is our hope, that you will be able to make it something explosive, and you get a little bit of, you handle some of the parking problem, and you're able to help those people who are going to work at the Publix and who are going to maintain the apartment complex. Maybe they'll be able to have a place to live somewhere close by. And that, I guess, would have to be an amendment to whatever is the agreement that we have, if this commission is agreeable to that. If you're not, then just agree to the original. But that's not what I will agree to. I will be opposed to that original just as it is.
You know,
And then we'll hear from us, and then we'll hear from the speakers, and then let us come back to it. You want to speak now?
yeah, I look at it as though they're just only paying or giving on the front end, because when we're gone and they completely own the building and we're out of the way, they've got nothing but 100% profit from there for many years to come after that, right? Aren't they?
You mean in terms of the parking garage?
In terms of the parking garage, because they can, and I did ask this to the manager, they can charge for the parking, right?
That's right.
So they can still come back and charge for our spaces and parking and still make a profit from that. I don't know if anyone knew that, but that was the question that I had asked in my secret meeting yesterday, was would they be able to profit from those spaces of ours? And they can profit. So they can put a machine and people can pay, or pay monthly meters, whatever they want to do, and they still can profit. So I think there are ways that we can work that out as far as that $288,000 up front.
Okay. All right. If there's no other comment, let's hear from the public. Thank you, and then we'll try to work through this to make it something that we can decide on tonight. One way or the other.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry. I've been kind of waiting for a chance to interject.
Oh, I'm
If I
so
can-
sorry. I forget about you,
It's okay.
cyber commissioner.
Yeah, I'm up here in the
forget
ether
about you.
watching.
Go ahead.
I've been listening quietly, and I've been doing some research as we speak. I think the average Publix is 45,000 square feet, and smaller ones are 27,000 square feet. So there's your answer to that question. I shared Commissioner Gilliland's concern from the inception that I thought this was a lot of information with not a lot of lead time. And because we've been lambasted time and time again for making, decisions that weren't fully run down, or having kind of soft numbers that didn't end up to be accurate, I shared and still share his concern about that. I'm concerned by the time crunch. I heard the speaker say that their due diligence period is expiring. I don't remember, or I don't know if he said what the drop dead deadline is for him to make that decision, but obviously that's an important deadline. So I would have felt much more comfortable with more time to run through these numbers and more time to bounce it off myself and the other staff members to make sure that I understand it. I mean, I appreciate the deputy city manager's job of explaining it, but if an attachment's not relevant, why is it being attached? I mean, I think that's just inherently confusing to attach appendixes or indexes that are no longer relevant, and that's the kind of stuff that we're going to be taken to task for by our constituents in the future. The other thing that I got a little bit confused about is the kind of the additional of the affordable housing component to what's being discussed, because it does seem like that's injecting another moving piece. And again, without, later on when we talk about affordable housing, I'll share some of my concerns, but I would have those same concerns now about, the benchmark that we set, and is there a value or is there a precedental value to the numbers that we're throwing around, and is this the appropriate manner to do that? Because again, without a solid benchmark for what we're going to ask people for, what people are going to be doing in the affordable housing arena, then every decision we make is going to be carefully scrutinized. Is it $1 a square foot? Is it this? Is it that? So I have some real concerns and trepidations about mixing those two things in, particularly because of what we're going to talk about later tonight. So my hope is that we would stay and vote on the original idea, and if there's no way to get additional time to review it, if it has to be done now, then so be it. But I don't want to cause a failure of the due diligence period if I don't have to. But if I could have more time to review it, I think that would be helpful and useful, and certainly just handle it at the next commission meeting. But as far as adding in the affordable housing component, I just think that could be really adding a lot of controversy to an otherwise to a project that otherwise doesn't need it right now. It needs the affordable housing. We need affordable housing. I just don't know if we need to inject any of that controversy into this agenda item at this time. I'm kind of referring to the letters and the kind of the threatened lawsuits and other things that are in our inboxes that we refer to. Maybe I'm misunderstanding the situation. Maybe that wouldn't be a concern here. But if the same concerns are present here, I wouldn't want to mix these two together and drag down a worthy project, because I'm with Commissioner Gilliland 100% on this. I like the project. I like the idea. I'm 100% in favor of it. It's just I would have liked more time to digest it. I would still like more time to digest it. And if I had to vote tonight on something, I can do that, certainly on the original project. But when we add in the additional component of affordable housing and that negotiation, that also makes me uncomfortable, because it ties in all the concerns I have about what we're going to discuss in the next meeting. So my preference would be to keep the original item as it came before us, and find out what the absolute drop dead date is for us. See if there's any time to get additional information. If no one else feels the need, but Commissioner Gilliland and I, then the vote will address that. But that was my concern. Is I don't feel like we've been given as much time as I would like, and I want to make sure that we have all the right numbers. Commissioner Gilliland's fond of the number 1 million. Everything ends up being $1 million, but he's right. Here, a $1 million or 10% swing is substantial. It is significant, and that $1 million could go a long way in affordable housing and other things like that. So, and I think Commissioner Gilliland's also right that part of the reason they need our help is because there's not a surplus of money in the project. So, if we're going to change anything, then I think we might need to go back to the drawing boards and get new calculations and new numbers based on just the conversation you were having, Mr. Mayor, with them about that. So I would like to see, how that might change things, and I'd like to look at the numbers a little bit more. If we add in an affordable housing component, I feel it just makes it too chaotic. So those are my comments. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Okay. There's no other comments from the commission. We'll go ahead and hear from from the public, and then I'll share with you this information. And we're going to come back to him, definitely. Yes, ma'am. Ms. Murphy.
Hi, Sandy Murphy, 136 Park Avenue. First, I want to remind you that Mr. Smith stood up here and said that it's not like people are waiting in line to take on this property. So I don't feel that sense of urgency related to the due diligence. We know who's selling the property. We know that it's likely that it can be extended. I don't think that you should allow yourself to be railroaded into a decision tonight based on somebody else's schedule. because you've been given poor information to make your decision on. And I think that really sets a bad precedent, example of making decisions, again, based on last-minute, partial, incorrect information. Second, the underserved market in Daytona Beach is not the luxury market, it's workforce housing. And once again, we're presented with a project that creates more low-wage jobs who won't be able to afford the units being built. If you look at the construction jobs, the economic impact study says the total Delta project, including the grocery, creates 315 jobs with a wage impact of over 19 million. That sounds impressive, but break it down. All those jobs won't be for people on the project from beginning to end, and the wages will be paid out over more than 1 year. But even if you say they all do stay and the wages are paid out over a very compressed 2-year period, that means that the 19 million really translates to an average annual wage for those people of $18,903. And average means that some people are going to be making less than that, but that average means the worker would be able to afford a unit of $525 a month to rent. I went on Glassdoor.com to get approximation of wages specific to Daytona Beach, and people are earning wages that go between $5.17 and $5.77 an hour for what they can afford. Mr. Smith has a great website. He says that he is really looking to do projects that have a high bar for creativity and complexity. I think that we should ask him to fulfill that, and I think if you approve this agreement tonight without negotiating some provision for affordable or workforce housing, you will have failed the residents.
Our next speaker is Ann Ruby, and on deck is John Nicholson. Okay. I can't see.
Hi, Ann Ruby, 137 Park Avenue. I get it. You want to boost downtown as a place to live, work, and play. You probably hope that the boost will lift up the neighboring CRAs of Midtown and Main Street. And you're probably correct in that effort and in that expectation. But any effort to boost downtown must take into account that too many working residents simply cannot afford the market rate apartments proposed by the Framework Group for Project Delta. In addition, the majority of ongoing jobs created by Project Delta will be low-wage jobs. No developer should be allowed to add more low-wage jobs without making a contribution towards the provision of housing affordable on those low wages. Developers simply cannot stuff their profits in their pockets and walk away, leaving us with the unintended negative consequences of their project. Right now, Project Delta is a gated community where the barrier is income. In your response to this TIF proposal, you have the opportunity to lift that gate. Please take this opportunity to make downtown a place where residents of all income levels can live, work, and play. Boost downtown not only with mixed use, but with mixed incomes. Some say we'd have enough affordable housing. That is a specious argument. With a median household income of $32,000, not 46, $32,000 a year, well over half our residents do not earn the $20 an hour needed to afford a market rate apartment. There is no reason other towns should house our workers, and there is no reason our working residents should have to leave town to live. Some say developers cannot afford to support workforce housing, but the needs of our community must be balanced against the self-determined, unauthenticated profit margins of developers. To quote Philip Smith, president of the Framework Group, each Framework project focuses on product innovation and serving an unmet need in the marketplace. There is a difference between need and want. We want market rate apartments downtown to give Beach Street a lift, but we need apartments affordable on the low wages earned by too many of our residents. So please insist that the Framework Group lives up to Mr. Smith's declaration. Insist that they focus on product innovation and come up with a project that serves the unmet needs of Daytona Beach, a community where over half our children live in poverty. Please remember, a rising tide may float all boats, but if you cannot afford a boat, you simply drowned.
Gee, you must have practiced that.
Our
Right
next
on time.
speaker is John Nicholson, and on deck is Jack White.
John Nicholson, 413 North Grandview Avenue. I don't want to go into the affordable housing. I do believe that we, the city of Daytona Beach, have more than enough affordable housing. The affordable housing that you're asking to build in our city is not for us. It's for the surrounding cities. How many affordable housing units are in Ponce Inlet? None. But don't they shop in the city of Daytona Beach? Don't they fly out of our airport? Don't they buy their cars from our Automart? We supply the workers for all the surrounding communities. And you're not taking that into account. Secondly, there are places for everything. Affordable housing does not belong on the ocean. It's for hotels. And we say, you can't build condominiums in this stretch. It has to be only hotels. There's a reason for that. This project shouldn't have affordable housing in it because of its location. In realtors, it's location, location, location. Now, several months ago, I asked Jim Chisholm to define TIF funding so that everybody knew exactly what it was. And Rob apparently still doesn't understand it. I live across from 5 units that use TIF housing. They own the entire property. They own their garages. There's a unit right across the street from my home that we gave $10 million to 20 years ago. And it only gives the city $1 million a year in additional taxes. That's addition to the $500,000 that they give into the CRA. So your general fund only gets $1 million a year from our investment 20 years ago. And when it goes full-time, we'll get all of that money. This project is perfect. It is exactly like Ocean Walk. Ocean Walk had 275 units. This is what, maybe 290? They own their parking garage, but it benefited the entire district. Those that opposed Ocean Walk are now making a profit from that. Paulie Politis, Timmy Costadegas absolutely opposed those projects. And now both of their properties are worth 10 times what they used to be. And they're kept in business by those tourists who come across the street. It's the same thing. We need this project, but not at 95%. We don't need that. We have to get a little bit less.
Thank you, sir.
There's money in the till. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Jack White, and on deck is Linda Smiley.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Jack White. I live at 415 South Palmetto, and I unfortunately don't have anything memorized, which is a mistake on my part because I'll start talking about my family or why I'm scared of spiders. This is emotional for me. I mean, I moved back here after college with my wife to make an impact in Daytona Beach. Moved back to downtown a little over 15 years ago, and we have been working vigorously at the downtown, much like many other merchants, shop owners, and restaurant owners. We've poured our blood, sweat, and tears into the downtown, and if I could quantify that, it would be several $100 million, which is plenty of equity for this project to support itself. We would help if we could, and we're there to support the residents that are hopefully be living downtown. This is a success-based formula to add 300 new residents. That's a winning formula for me. There's no outlay of money on the city's part. For 40 years, the CRA has existed, and at no point have we really utilized the TIF formula for what it was built for, exactly a project like this. First Baptist Church has existed on this site for 125 years, and not 1 year have they paid property taxes. So you can't use that as an example of something being taken away. It never existed from the beginning. 10% of a project, and then that number has come up, is pocket change when it comes to the risk of a project. That can get eaten up quickly with increase in construction costs, 6-month delay, not hitting the market that you were expecting, that is piddly money when it comes to a project of this type of risk. And lastly, the public benefit is the people. That's what makes downtowns work. And if we don't have them living downtown, it doesn't work. I can't emphasize and stress that enough. My entire family's moved downtown. I don't have any more kids to move downtown. I'm working on it, but I don't have any more. We need more people living downtown. Just lastly, let me say this. Philip Smith must have a passion for this. It is too easy to build in the suburban area than to make this type of risk. I applaud him. We've been working on it. Someone has figured it out. Thank God someone is willing to do it, and I hope we can come to a yes on this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Our final speaker on this item is Linda Smiley.
Linda Smiley, 357 Manhattan. I told Sandy I'd finish her thing, so here goes. Judging by the projects on the website, he and his staff, that's Philip Smith, are smart and creative, and they have experience with affordable housing. We need to challenge framework to provide Daytona Beach with value for this TIF, not some amorphous value like improve the image of Ridgewood Avenue, but in real value that delivers something to address the unmet needs in our city. Defer action, go to the bargaining table, and get some value in return. If you approve this agreement tonight without negotiating some provision for affordable housing, you will have failed the residents of Daytona Beach. Revitalization. Riverfront Esplanade was going to do this. Hope is not a strategy. So that's that. So my comments are, you need to remember that to fill in units, there has to be something for people to do here, culture, arts, so forth. We're severely lacking here in those areas. Better jobs here so people are not spending all the money they have that they make to live here. Some of you say that this is what the city has been waiting for, that prosperity downtown is coming. Well, let me remind you that so is Christmas. We need to stop giving away public money for private development. When Brown & Brown came, they said that they would have to cancel if the city didn't help. They weren't going anywhere, but the commission caved and gave them what they asked for and asked for nothing in return. Please don't do this. Commissioner May, please do not guess when you are using somebody else's money. You know, when you say, I guess this about funds and values, especially the residents' money. And for somebody to come here and say they have to have a decision tonight is like blackmail. Stop giving our money away before you have all the facts and numbers. If they say they need the help, let them show the numbers to prove it. Thank you.
I'm going to take a second and respond to that, even though you don't have to leave. You're probably going to want to say something in return. You know what? I've been a merchant down there for 15 years. For 15 years, I've gotten up 7 days a week. That's how hard all of those merchants have to work. So when people are at home, holidays, Christmas, Thanksgiving, I have to earn every single dollar on every single holiday. I have had to come in there to make extra income. And the only reason I bought down there, and this makes me emotional, is because I saw the potential of one street, Magnolia. Now, I've only been there for 15 years. TikTok, Dr. Wabba Wabba, he bought that there. Growing up, he envisioned what Beach Street could become, what that whole community could become. What you have down there are people who dreamed of a future. So you know what? When I use words like I guess, I'm gonna say it differently. I hope that we can do this. Now, when you're not a business person, all right? Downtown, we not only have to work 7 days a week, all right? It's not just a passion. So many merchants have lost so much down there, and all of us have been waiting, just like Main Street's been waiting. We've all been waiting for something. So when you go to work every day and you get a paycheck, and I am going to get emotional, and you have a guaranteed wage, there are a whole bunch of us who are taking risks every day so that you can enjoy an experience, so you can enjoy Daytona Beach. So no, it is a guess, and it is a hope, and I do hope this man can do it, because we're not going to I've been waiting for 15 years, and others have been waiting for 30 years. That's how long we've been waiting. And so, yeah, I do want to be passionate. It's not just passion. This is me realizing for 15 years, Christmas, holiday, Thanksgiving, and you've been to my studio. You know this is true. So do my clients. But I'm not alone. There are other merchants doing it.
All right, thank you. Are there any other speakers? There's no
That
other
was my
speakers.
final
Okay.
speaker.
All right, we're at a point where we have discussed this, and we realize, it's up to the commission. You essentially have, he agrees to, what we've discussed thus far, but Commissioner in Cyberland, Delgado, and Commissioner Gilliland, I don't want to speak for you, but seems to me as though you guys would rather not make a decision tonight, and I'm not sure where the rest of us are.
Well, we need to figure out how many parking spaces he's going to cut out of the garage to be able to afford this affordable housing contribution. Because that's where he said he's going to cut to find the money to be able to make the payment. I think it's a horrible idea on a subsidized project to try and get money for another initiative. That does not make sense. If you're already going to the bank, why do you want to increase the person's payment? That part doesn't make any sense to me at all.
Okay. To make that work, what is it, 588 units? 588 parking spaces? You wouldn't have to, you wouldn't have to cut any more spaces than that. Is that what we're saying? Or should we, as the manager suggests, request Mr. Smith to agree to work with the city to develop a fair method to address these issues? You don't support that. You don't support it, and I don't know if Commissioner Delgado supports it. I'm not going to support it without addressing affordable workforce housing in the proposal. So, and I can't speak for everyone else, but if this is a priority from my perspective, TIF is a part of that priority. So I don't, so I need to hear from you, from the other commissioners. Commissioner, any other commissioners want to go or weigh in? Yeah.
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Commissioner in
Cyberspace here. Well, I guess I have two sets of concerns. One is the affordable housing component. I'm with you 100% that we need affordable housing. I've been with you from day one on that. I am concerned by the developments and the legalities of how we go about implementing it. And again, I wish we could have this conversation after we had the commission meeting and talked about the affordable housing aspect that we're considering there, because I think now these two have become entwined. And so we're going to end up, to me, it's like a conversation that we're about to have, I'm very concerned about the way that we're doing this in light of the case law and the information that was sent to us in the form of several letters, as well as our own opinions from council about that. So, and I also, would want to see, if we're changing something, then I would want to see all the numbers fleshed out and have a moment to think through the consequences of it and not just kind of do it off the cuff. So, certainly if we're adding the affordable housing component to this, and I would definitely want time, or at least, a reworking of the numbers to make sure that I understood it, that everything was what it's turned out to be. I'm just not sure that we should implement the affordable housing aspect now in this way with this proposal, and without thinking about how it's going to impact the other proposals that are in the other projects that are in the pipeline. I don't know if that doctrine that we've been talking about is maybe going to cause us trouble in the next meeting. It would be implicated by here. If we make some agreement here with them, do we set some precedent? Do we set some benchmark? Is this really a voluntary negotiation at this point, or have we stepped over some line? So I just have that concern. It's the same concern I'm going to express later tonight. But I agree 100% with the sentiment. I want to make that very clear. And I think Commissioner Gilliland, I mean, if I can speak for him briefly, he doesn't need me to do it though, but I think he and I are both in agreement with the spirit of the project and the goals of the project. And I'm with you on the workforce housing. I'm concerned about the mechanics and the logistics and the legality of it in this project. And I'm also concerned that I don't have enough time to review the numbers. And if we're going to add the workforce housing component, then I think we really need to look at the numbers because we don't have studies. We don't have anything else. The number, has to be defendable, I would imagine. It has to have some rational basis. So I'm fine with doing it, but I need more information to feel comfortable doing it. And I would just think that we're creating a lot. I'm just worried about the precedent that we may be setting. I don't know if legal can answer that. Are we setting some?
Yeah, let's let Mr. Jagger weigh in for you, because I think that because this is TIF funding, it's at our discretion. But Mr. Jagger, you want to kind of weigh in on what he's saying?
Yeah,
Please.
it is a different context, if you will. The LDC amendment we'll be talking about later on tonight has to do with the process for approval of PD agreements. That's really a zoning matter. This is a development incentive grant, and so your only requirement for approval of this is that it meet a public purpose. So you do have more leverage in this sense. I do want to add one legal issue, though, that has developed as part of this conversation, and that has to do with the use of the funds that would be dedicated to affordable housing. And because it's coming from TIF in the downtown area, arguably, legally, without having had a chance to research that, it should be used in the downtown area. And so that might be another restriction you would have to consider.
Yeah, and I fully expected that in some way. Yeah.
Mr. Jagger, there's not a concern about a precedent or anything like that as far as if there's an assessment or a dollar amount set here, that's somehow going to be an issue when we go to the other side of the agenda and discuss it in the context of the LDC?
The issue has been raised in the letters you're referring to, Commissioner Delgado, has to do with standards which may be adopted as part of your PD approval process in order to avoid claims of ambiguity or vagueness. So that's an issue we'll discuss later on with regard to the PD process. This issue in this context with a development incentive grant is different. There's really no precedent to be set in this area. This is just a question of, do you want to add that additional public benefit as a justification for the grant? It would be cleaner.
So if we say $1 per square foot or X dollars per unit in this category, there's no risk that comes back on the other side in the LDC and they say, well, you already used that number. That's a benchmark number. That's a reasonable number. I mean, we don't have to worry that if we pick a number here that's not defensible, that we'll have it, thrown at us on the LDC.
Yeah, I see those issues as completely separate. That being said, it would be cleaner in this context for the development incentive grant if you just had a requirement that a certain percentage of their units, residential units, be affordable housing instead of the linkage fee coming back. But that's completely up to you. What number they agree to in terms of that linkage fee is a matter of negotiation as part of this grant agreement.
Okay, thank you. I really appreciate the clarification. I misunderstood it.
Okay. All right. Anyone else? No? Commissioner Traeger?
I'm just worried about the legal aspect of it.
He's clarifying that for you.
So that was great clarification for me, because that's what I was concerned about.
There's none.
The precedent we're setting is that any residential development project in any redevelopment area in the city of Daytona Beach it's going to get public funds, is going to be expected to contribute $1 per square foot to a fund. And I still completely disagree with the fact that the projects that don't work financially in the front end have to make a payment into a fund on the back end. It's just our money. It's our TIF money. It's part of that $10.5 million. That's why it's going to go down to, the parking garage is going to go down to from 9.5 to 9.25, and he's going to cut out 20 public parking spaces to be able to afford the $250,000 roughly that's going to go into this fund. And I just don't think that's the right way to do this.
And I respect that. I understand that. that feeling. And I don't know that there's a right way, but what I do know is that this is a way that has to be made. It has to happen. And you know, we'll discuss some of this later, and I think much of it will shake out in a way that it's not as convoluted as we think, some of the later discussion, but everybody now has something to say about affordable housing. But nobody was willing to do anything. And this is an opportunity, and I'm going to take every opportunity that I can to make sure that we're addressing this issue. And I see it as a part of the process of ensuring that those folks who are working down there, and I see it throughout. So I think we are on to something. Let's see if we can bring this to a close.
I'm a little bit concerned also that maybe we should have had some give and take between the developers and gotten some of their ideas, some of their, so that they would buy in on this. I think we need to bring some more entities to the table to really kind of flesh this out a little bit more. That's what I'm concerned about.
But that, what you're discussing is what we'll get to in the next half of the meeting, the next half.
But this,
when we discuss that.
but I mean, this, well, Mr. Jagger said it would be completely legal.
The determination for you to make is whether or not there's a valid public purpose to justify the development incentive grant before you tonight.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Mr. Smith, do you need to say something?
Just to be clear, the deadline, the contractual deadline is mine and not yours. I was probably remiss in even sharing that information. I was just complimenting the manager and Drew for their willingness to work with us on what they knew was a very short period of time to help us make this happen. It is irresponsible to ask you to do something you're not comfortable doing, and it would be also foolish for me to risk this not passing just for a little bit of lack of clarity. So I want to make it clear. So I'm okay if it pleases the commission for a continuance, and we can put our noses back down and figure out a way to codify some of these specifics and get everybody comfortable with what they're seeing and hearing. And then that's a risk that I've got to take and work out with my seller.
Okay, so I'm going to ask a question. I'm a pretty direct person. Based on this conversation, are you still interested in working with us, or have we scared you silly? Because that happens in relationships. I'm serious. That happens, right? You hear some things in relationship, and you sit back and you go, "Ooh, got a little nervous there, didn't I?" Yeah. And I just want to know. I mean, because I downtown core, right, beachside area as well. I do not want to lose this opportunity. It means a lot. We have the affordable housing issue, which to me is separate from this potential issue here. It's a totally separate type thing.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts?
Well, the other thing that can freak someone out is in a relationship is wanting to move too fast. So I have to be sensitive to that as well. Honestly, no. I mean, I think some of these concerns I've heard before. I think that, like I said, you guys are doing what many, many cities have done successfully, grappled with redevelopment, and asked themselves the question about, is this the right thing to do? Is it fair? Is it adequate? What else should we be considering? Which is how this affordable housing thing came up tonight. What else? So those are all fair questions. I'm not going to answer them the way that you want me to all the time. But we're dedicated to be good partners. I told you we're not going anywhere. We already have a development here. We want to do more. We want to do this one. I think this has great potential. But if we need to spend a little more time to sketch it out, then let's do that.
I was having some abandonment issues, but I'm feeling better now. You've made me feel better. Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, I'm good with that personally, and if nobody opposes, what we'll ask is, as the manager wrote on this note, that Mr. Smith and staff get together to make sure that they develop a method to fund, our wishes and fund the project, which I think that's where we are. And then we'll come back and hopefully approve this and hopefully see something dynamic. And even beyond this, other projects that help us to meet some of our other objectives. Okay? All right.
Derek, I have a question about your dollar a square foot model. So what we have in our backup is this is a little over, the apartment building is a little over 250,000 square feet. So, but not all of that are units. You know, there's common areas, there's lobbies, there's stairwells, there's hallways. Are you thinking that it's everything under roof, or are you thinking it's the 1 per square foot per residential unit?
Well, I think it has to be under roof in a sense because the benefit of, say, a common area or if a development did some huge workout space, those are amenities that attract people and the folks can use. And they would have the benefit of that.
I mean, I'm opposed to it either way. I just want to make sure, you know, we've been doing this scattershot from the beginning with no data to back up anything that we're doing. And it's important that what little information there is, we get out there so that people can start interpreting whether or not, you know, what the true effects are. I mean, this is going to seriously hamper residential development and redevelopment areas, you know, if we go forward with it, which I completely disagree with.
How would it, well, I don't need to ask that. I'll just state this. It doesn't, because this is TIF. This is TIF fund. So it's essentially a choice that we have to agree to spend it one way or the other. So, and we have to make decisions about these funds. All we're saying is that a part of our decision is that workforce / affordable is a part of the equation that we want to embrace. Because if we don't embrace it, either we can embrace it or we can say, well, we're not going to, this is $10 million. We're not going to give any of the $10 million to anybody.
And then
It doesn't make sense to say that it doesn't, that it's going to hamper it. It's not going to hamper it. It's going to hamper people who don't want to do it.
Somebody comes and doesn't ask for TIF, but all of a sudden they've got to make a $250,000 contribution to be able to develop an apartment building in Midtown. You know, what happens there? I mean, we're going to generate TIF from them, but they have to pay this affordable housing tax on the back end to be able to get a yes vote from
We didn't establish a precedence of how it would be paid. It's just a matter of fact that this will be addressed. And that's all we're saying, is that it'll be addressed, whether it's on the front end, the back end, midway point. At some point, we know, because the issue of affordable housing, workforce housing, is not going away in 5 years or 20 years. They have it in Switzerland. It's all over the world. And we're not going to solve it in 5 years or 10 years. And so we have to continue to address it into the posterity of this commission, I would assume.
And if you wanted to make, if we were talking about kind of an earmark, that TIF dollars generated from a new residential project, that we would take 10% of that or 50% of that or something and set it aside in our redevelopment trust fund to say this will be used for affordable housing initiatives within the district, I could get into something like that. But this idea of telling the developer that if you want to get a yes vote, then you got to pay $250,000, that part I don't agree with.
The reality is that he didn't have to do that.
You don't have to do the
We're
process.
taking spaces away from our own benefit and saying that this is what we value. So that's really, you're making it sound as though it's something that it's not. And to me, you're frightening people by saying that we're going to force people to do something that we're not. We're simply taking the funds that are essentially ours and saying that this is where we want to appropriate them. As opposed to appropriating them into a parking space, we're appropriating them into affordable workforce units. It's just that simple. Just making a swap.
Okay.
And I'm curious, the dollars will be reinvested back into the downtown area, or are they restricted just to the CRA?
Well, we don't know that. I think that's something that we have to determine, and we'll allow staff to determine that. But I'm fully fine with saying that if these 300,000, if they need to stay in downtown, that's fine. But I'm not going to be committed to that if that's not the rule, because our objective in Daytona Beach must be Daytona Beach. And so it's not that because I'm the mayor of the whole city. I'm not going over one zone or the next zone. All 6 of them, got to be taken care of. And I think by and large, we as a commission, that's how we operate, okay? And that's, you know, I don't think that we sit up here and fight over my zone and my street didn't get this or that, you know, okay? Any other issues or comments?
Will there be a motion to continue then?
Do we have a motion to continue?
I'll make that motion, please.
I'll second that motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second and a third from Cyberland. We'll take the motion and the second.
And the continuance is until
And
next meeting,
continuance until next meeting?
November 4th?
Okay. All right. Got a motion and a second. I was about to hit the gavel. All those in favor, let it be noted by saying aye.
Aye.
Those
Aye.
in opposition, same sign. Motion carries 7-0. All right, that's the only item, right? It's the longest item, I think, in the history of CRAs in Daytona Beach. At least one of the longest. This meeting will be adjourned, and we will reconvene our regularly scheduled meeting at 8:30. Thank you.